This is the Travel and Tourism Show on Star FM.
Good evening. Welcome to the Travel and Tourism Show on Star FM, sounding good all the time. I'm Mazwi Shamu. Tonight, we are joined in the studio by Mr. Paul Matamisa, who is the CEO at Zimbabwe Council for Tourism. We would like to go deeper into what the purpose of this organization is all about. Mr. Matamisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good evening.
As we begin, please explain what the Zimbabwe Council for Tourism is and what purpose it serves.
Well, Zimbabwe Council for Tourism was formed way back in 1988, and the purpose then was to make sure that the issues of industry were all put in one house so that it can be actually brought to the authorities and various interested parties all at the same time, rather than bringing issues individually. One association coming up with the same issue over and over again. So it became rather difficult and monotonous for the authorities, and they felt that there was need for us to come together. And that's when it was formed in 1988.
Okay, so when you talk about associations, which associations are these?
We've got a number of associations who are applying trade within the tourism sector. For instance, we would have hoteliers, the hotel, the accommodation sector. And then you have, from the transport side, obviously, you're looking at the airlines. You're also looking at the ground transport that is there. And we have also car hire companies. They are also part of that transport sector. And we have those who are into services within the sector. So all these would have issues pertaining to their own particular area. But in the main, you would find that those issues, when they're aggregated together, they're actually one and the same. And therefore, the Zimbabwe Council for Tourism became necessary and was put in place so that it could then make sure that we coordinate our efforts and work together, and so that we make life easier for everybody. And in fact, it also created a number of good things happening now for these sectors within the industry, because then they could concentrate on other issues rather than looking at lobbying aspects, looking at advocacy and so on. That became the main purview for the Zimbabwe Council for Tourism.
What is the relationship between the Zimbabwe Council of Tourism and the ZTA and the Ministry of Tourism, ultimately?
Well, Zimbabwe Council for Tourism is an institution that is standing for the interests of the private sector bodies, corporates, as well as the associations. Whereas ZTA, they are standing there for government. They are an agents of government who are applying trade mainly in the area of marketing and promotion, which they were given by the government, and they also have the role of being the regulator of the industry. In other words, licensing and permits and so on, they all come through ZTA for those who want to come and do business within tourism.
Okay, so you mentioned that the Zimbabwe Council for Tourism puts forward any issues, any grievances that the players within the industry may have. What are some of these issues?
Well, a number of challenges. For instance, recently we have had the issue of, I think we have had a lot of us talking about taxes. Recently, the one issue that is actually, been doing its rounds within the industry and causing a lot of strife and concern for businesses was the issue of on what we called packaged meals packaged together with accommodation. Zimra had thought it was necessary that, I'd say way back in the early 2000s, the issue of tax was, remember that we had what was known as the zero rating for accommodation.
Yeah.
And that, when it was put in place by the Minister of Tourism then, it actually allowed the industry to market their product without raising tax on the export sales only. However, as time went on, in 2014, the Ministry of Finance changed its policy, and accommodation became taxable for export. So when that happened, it also affected, we thought, accommodation, food. But however, when Zimra looked at it, they said that it wasn't. If it is packaged together with accommodation before the zero rating, it was fine. But now, after the zero rating had been removed, it became now pliable for tax. So they decided now they were going to go back 6 years from 2006 going back, and that would actually cause a lot of from 2015 going back 6 years, and that would cause a lot of strife because people had been, they stayed, they're gone. No tax was raised. And now when you say you want them to go backwards, what you're actually saying now, you want the operator now to pay that tax. And that tax is actually not for the operator to pay. It was actually meant for the consumer. And now the consumer having gone, the responsibility was left with the operator, which was very, very tough. And it was going into millions of dollars. So that was one of the issues that we had to fight. And luckily, we are happy as industry because the Ministry of Finance had our case and they reviewed the situation. The position is now that that tax was set aside. They are not going to be paying retrogressive taxes.
That's good news.
It is indeed.
For the consumer, would this have affected them as well if, in the event that they had maintained their position that tax must be paid? Would it mean that you would have been doubling prices now to try and make up for that? Because where else are you going to get the money?
Absolutely, you're right. And that thought would certainly have to come into mind because they had nothing else to do but to raise it from somewhere. And unfortunately, the future consumer, for instance, was the one who was going to be affected because then your pricing now has to take into account what you had lost. You have to try and recover it now. So that was a position which was rather going to be untenable and would make us more expensive if we compare our colleagues within the region.
And we've already been regarded as being one of the most expensive in terms of the facilities, the accommodation facilities, the outpricing charges.
Yes, the issue of pricing is very emotive really. And I always say that the most important thing is for us to we need to survey the landscape. And the major problem that we have in Zimbabwe, in fact, are two when it comes to pricing. The first one was that we are using a US dollar. And the US dollar, obviously, it's a very strong currency. And compared to, for instance, within the region, with the Pula, the Rands, and so on, the Kwachas, you find that we would eventually turn out to be a little bit more expensive than they are. And then the other thing that also affected, and that would affect us, was the issue of the value chain. When you consider our value chain, and you also consider that in 2008, when the prices, when suddenly our currency changed, we moved into the multi-currency regime. That currency, that situation, unfortunately, we didn't manage properly as a nation, because what should have happened actually was to see the meaning of that new currency as compared to the previous currency that we were using, the Zim dollar. But we didn't do that. We did not investigate that situation, and in the end, people just charged what they thought was right, and that carried on and up now. That was the situation. So people have had to adjust here and there and so on, but really not effectively. And it has not helped our case in terms of the pricing structure for Zimbabwe, particularly in comparison to the region. We are more expensive. We will be more expensive.
Yeah, we will be. So for customers or consumers, how do they benefit from the Zimbabwe Council for Tourism?
Well, Zimbabwe Council for Tourism stands for the interests of all its stakeholders, and that includes your travelers or the customers, and that would include also staff members within the industry. It would include your main three: the consumer, the consumer, the staff, and the management as well. What we want to see is a situation where we have an industry that is well organized and that is doing business in a manner that is, morally correct. We don't want to be doing things wrongly. So Zimbabwe Council for Tourism stands for those interests. And in our mission and vision, this is very clearly stated, that we are there to make sure that all our stakeholders benefit and they see good things accruing out of association within the industry.
So as a customer walking into any one of the travel and tourism organizations that is not affiliated any one of the associations or the Zimbabwe Council and ultimately the Zimbabwe Council for Tourism, am I at a disadvantage?
Yes, you would be at a disadvantage because obviously we have no authority over that kind of business. However, recently I had a case which was brought to my desk of an organization that is not a member. But however, they had a customer had written from, I think it was from India. They had problems with that particular customer. I didn't say that because they are not our members, but I took it up and I went and saw the people, and they were good. They received me well. They could have said, we can't entertain you because you are not part of, you are not really, we are not your member. But they listened to what I had to say in terms of the issues that were raised, and they gave their responses, which I thought was fair and good, and then we communicated back. So it is, sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes we have to go to the company concerned, even though they are not our members.
So how can customers know that the organization is affiliated with an association and is under the ZCT?
It is very difficult because with our constitution the way it is, it doesn't force anyone to belong to any organization. It's really a question of choice. And how would customers know? There is no direct route of us informing them. We can't advertise to say that so-and-so is not our member or so-and-so is our member. We can say these are our members. We can say that. But we can go and say so-and-so doesn't belong to our organization, therefore, whatever, and so on. It will be immoral as well. It will not be correct.
Yeah, we are Star FM, sounding good all the time, and you're listening to the Travel and Tourism Show, where we are talking to Mr. Paul Matamisa, who is the CEO for the Zimbabwe Council for Tourism. September is the month of tourism worldwide.
Indeed.
World Tourism is celebrated on the 27th of September. Does ZCT have any plans to make noise about tourism in Zimbabwe, tourism in the world?
Yes, in Zimbabwe, obviously, we would have programs that we're doing. We will also join hands with Ministry of Tourism and ZTA in terms of organizing various programs to highlight the importance of this particular day. But for the month, because our minister has declared that the month of September, per se, we have to look at it as a month of tourism, not just look at one day, the 27th. So we're starting on the 1st of September this year. We're having a golf tournament, which is picking on the theme of the United Nations General Assembly, which is sustainable tourism.
The year of sustainable tourism.
Yes, for development, for economic development or for development. Yes. Now, we are staging a golf tournament, which actually is also going to be a fundraiser for us. You might appreciate that ZCT doesn't itself generate money. It's an organization that is fed from its members in terms of subscriptions. In that regard, what we have tried to assist the members so that we can raise also funds from that side. We have got that golf tournament which is taking place on the 1st of September at the police grounds, ZRP clubhouse there. And we are also encouraging those that are coming and other members of the public that seeing that we want to clean our environment. We are asking for people to bring a bin, donate a broom, hard broom, garden brooms or the ones that you use outside, and so that we can also in the end donate these to various environmental organizations that are, doing the service of cleaning our environments. So we hope that people will come in their numbers to participate in the golf tournament, to assist us so that we can try also and make our environment cleaner, so that we have more tourists coming, because a clean environment will actually encourage more visitors. People don't want to come to dirty places and so on.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
It all sounds very exciting. Mr. Matamisa, thank you very much for coming to the show. We've been speaking to Mr. Matamisa, who is the CEO for the Zimbabwe Council for Tourism, and he has been highlighting the purpose of the Zimbabwe Council of Tourism, the importance for companies who are in the travel and tourism industry to register with the ZCT so that their issues can be lobbied and they can get benefits from being part of the ZCT. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a pleasure. Thanks very much for the invitation.
Star FM, sounding good all the time.
Still in the city of kings and queens, did you know that Bulawayo means place of slaughter? This comes from the battles and bloodshed that happened when Kulumani, the first son of Mzilikazi, was made king whilst Mzilikazi was still alive. So this was taken as an act of treason and all who were involved were killed. In Bulawayo is the Natural History Museum of Zimbabwe. It was built in 1962. It is home to extensive displays of history, geology, animals, birds and insects, and it displays the second largest mounted elephant in the world. Send us your fascinating facts about the City of Kings, or better still, tell us your favorite attraction in Bulawayo, and we will share it right here on the Travel and Tourism Show. The WhatsApp number to use is 0734 610 613, or you can like my Facebook page and follow me on Twitter, Mazwi Shamu. Let's hear from you. Till next time, happy traveling.
Thank you for tuning in to the Travel and Tourism Show on Star FM.